Good evening, everyone. I'm Superintendent Jody Gunning, and I would like to welcome you all to the Litchfield Elementary School District Governing Board Candidate Forum. We want to thank each and every one of you for being here tonight, especially our potential board candidates for coming out and spending your evening to answer a few questions and to share some insight into your lives. And thank you so much for dedicating your time in doing so, and for taking on this possible opportunity of being a governing board member. It takes a lot of dedication and a lot of time, and we really appreciate your willingness to try. I have a few introductions tonight. I would like to introduce board member Melissa Zeidema, board member Jeremy Honak, President Danielle Clymer, and Maricopa County Superintendent Steve Watson. Thank you all for joining us this evening as well. And now I will turn it over to President Clymer to begin our process.
Thank you. It's actually very different being on this side of the dais. I actually kind of like it. So anyway, thank you guys again for being here, and good evening to everyone. Before we get started, I want to say thank you to the three of you that are here tonight, but also to remind everyone that there are 6 total candidates that have submitted a letter of interest for this. All 6 candidates were invited, but 3 were unavailable. Their names are Teddy Castro, Dennis Dowling, and Ryan Owens. So just so that everybody knows, in full transparency, there are 6 people that have put in an application for this appointment. I want to quickly go through some protocols before we start the questioning, just so that you have a good understanding of how everything's going to work. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask before we get started. To begin, each candidate will have 60 seconds for an opening statement. I'm going to start left to right on the dais, and Ms. Creda will start with you. And from there, questions will alternate as to who will answer first, and I'll let you know ahead of time. Questions have not been given to the candidates ahead of time, and this is the first time that they have heard them. These questions have been collected from current board members, district staff, parents, and community members via the district's website. Each candidate will then be given 2 minutes to respond to each question asked of them. You'll see the timer in the screen to my right here. You'll be able to kind of track when you have 10, 15 seconds left, and you can wrap that up. The topic of questions covered here will only be items within the jurisdiction of the governing board. And then when the questions have concluded, each candidate will then be given 60 seconds for a closing statement. And I'll give you a minute or two to think about that. Just as a reminder to all of the candidates and everybody here, as with all of our governing board meetings, this is being streamed live on our YouTube channel so that you can either rewatch it or join us at a later time. Are there any questions before we begin? All right, let's jump in. Of all the questions that were submitted from our various stakeholders, they seem to be collected into 3 categories. That is board service, current issues facing the district, and future planning. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate through several questions in each category, alternating between categories, and then try to finish with as many current issues as I can, because I think that's probably what's on the bulk of people's mind. So we will get started initially with our opening statements. Ms. Creda, we will allow you to go first.
Good evening. My name is Sandra Creda. I am a parent of 2 students in Litchfield Elementary School District. I've been involved with the district, I would say, for probably 8 years now, because my daughter's an 8th grader. I have 1 student at Rancho Santa Fe, and I have 1 at Wigwam Creek. I am a native Arizonan. I was born in Maryville Hospital. I graduated from Trevor Brown, went to ASU. I've lived here my whole life, except for a few years of graduate school. Both of my parents were teachers. My dad taught in Maryville at Desert Sands Junior High. And I was a student there when he was a teacher, my poor dad. And my mother was a home ec teacher at North High School. And then she eventually went on to real estate and to be a community college teacher. So I love the district. I'm very concerned to make about its future and about our students. And thank you for the opportunity.
Great, thank you. Mr. Fahey, I'll allow you to go next.
My name is Ren Fahey. I'm a resident of Litchfield Park. I have 4 grandkids that I'm excited about their future. I'm a teacher. I've been teaching 26 years. I'm excited about the future of education, and I'm optimistic, and I have a growth mindset. And I'm thinking that moving forward, that I want to stay focused on the children and what's best for them. I think the last 2 years have been very difficult on children, and there's a lot of chaos in education right now. And what I'd like to do is just bring back a moderate position based on what's best for the community and the children and the residents of Litchfield Park. My mom and dad were passionate about education. I was the first one that went to college in my family, and it's made a difference. And once you get one person through, it opens the doors for the rest of the people. And I have dreams for the kids making it through college.
Great, thank you. Mrs. Wallace, you're up.
Hello, I'm Michelle Wallace. I just want to start by thanking the current board for everything you guys have done the last couple years. I know it's been rough on you, and all the parents that are watching and submitted questions that you care enough to ask and get to know us. So I just want to say thank you to all of you. But I am a mother of 2. I have 2 kids that attend the Litchfield School District. I live in Goodyear. I was a teacher in Tolleson for 7 years. And then I decided to stay home with my kids once I had kids. I recently went back to work, and I work in sales for a heavy duty machine company. So I totally turned paths on what I do. And I just am interested in being able to be a part of the school in a different way than teaching, and hopefully offer the experience that I have through teaching and administration into this arena.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. That concludes our opening statements. So we'll move on to the questions. Mrs. Creda, since you started, Mr. Fahey, I'm going to toss the first question to you. What we'll do is, like I said, you're going to have 2 minutes to answer, and then Mrs. Wallace, you will go, and we'll just go in order of that. The first category is board service. And again, these came from current board members, community members, staff, parents, etc. What type of skills and experiences will you bring to the board, and what steps have you taken to prepare for board service?
I've been a teacher for 26 years. I have a master's degree in administration and leadership. And for probably the last 15 years, I've had the idea of running for a school board. I think a teacher could be a voice of reason in these times, in these environments. I believe that as the school goes, so goes the community. And so my goal is to establish really positive relationships with the staff, the students, and the community, rebuild those relationships. And really the focus I want to be on the children. I think the children deserve a great education. And I think Litchfield has been a really great school district since I've lived here. And I want to continue to see it thrive and grow and prosper and, really bring out the best in the kids. I think that's what our job is as a board member, is to bring out the best in the children in this district, provide a good environment for our staff, and build relationships with the community where they can be involved and have a say, a seat at the table. And so the future is, I'm excited about the future and optimistic that children can thrive given the opportunity. And I think that Litchfield's done a good job of providing that opportunity. And I think that moving forward, I think the board can have a big impact on student success and retaining teachers in this district. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Wallace, you have a choice. I can repeat the question or, okay. What type of skills and experiences will you bring to the board, and what steps have you taken to prepare for board service?
Okay. Like I said, I was a teacher for 7 years. I taught 2 years in Michigan before coming here. So I taught for 9 years. And I have similar backgrounds to Ren. I also have a degree in early childhood education. I have a master's degree in educational leadership as well. I'm also have worked for Pearson in curriculum and am very well. I have served as the before and after school director for the district that I worked in. So I have some administrative experience as well as teaching experience. So kind of both sides of that as well. As far as being prepared for the board, I've tried, especially in the last couple of years, I try to watch most of the board meetings, keep myself knowledgeable about the things that are going on in the district and with the board. Prior to this meeting specifically, I did a little more research on our testing rates and the budget, since that's such a huge part of the district and how that looks. I also attended the workshop that Steve Watson did last weekend, just to learn more about the role as a governing board member, so that I was the best prepared that I could be. I had talked to Jody a little bit and asked her some questions as well. So I've just tried to really prepare myself to have the most information that I can about the district specifically, so that if I am selected, that I will be able to hit the ground running and I kind of know what's going on, and it won't hopefully be as much of a catch-up time.
Wonderful, thank you. Mrs. Creda, would you like to repeat the question? Would you like me to? Okay, go ahead, the time is yours.
No, thank you. So a little of my background, I have been practicing law in Arizona since 1997. And part of what I do a lot of employment law and a lot of litigation, but I have also represented a number of school districts, a number of teachers, and also a number of students. I've represented districts in due process hearings. I've also represented students in due process hearings. I've taught part of a graduate level course at ASU as an adjunct professor in school law for administrators. I also have taught years ago, I presented at the Arizona School Boards Association some courses on open meeting law. So I'm well versed in some of the legal requirements and the legal things that school districts go through on a daily basis with students with disabilities, with teacher hiring, with administrator issues, and also what they're required to do to comply with open meetings law and other things. I think that the district already has a wonderful lawyer. I'm not interested in providing legal advice, but I can hit the ground running without having to learn about that part of the background. I have also been on the Litchfield Elementary School District Educational Foundation, which is a nonprofit board that raises money to support teachers and staff in the district. I think I've been on it for about 5 years. We've raised over $150,000 to support our teachers and staff. I did attend years ago. This is my second time trying to get appointed to the board. I attended the 6-hour class for for school board members back in 2016. I also have been on the board of the PTA and done a lot of volunteering in the schools, and have tried to stay current on what's happening in our district and with our school board.
Wonderful, thank you. That concludes our first question. Now we're going to move on to the current issues category. The first question is, what policies or initiatives should the governing board consider to address the staffing shortages throughout the district? Mrs. Wallace, that's to you first.
Staffing is definitely an issue across the state. I think that Litchfield has actually done a really good job of having certified teachers in almost all of the classes, if I'm correct. So that's actually great during the current time. I do think that recruiting out of state is going to be a big benefit to the district. I shared with Jody that is how I came to Arizona. I was recruited at a job fair, not by the district I taught in, but by a lot of other districts that got me interested in Arizona and taught me about the education system in Arizona and offered me opportunities. So I think that recruiting in those kinds of formats might be a great way to to bring more teachers in to the state. I think Litchfield is one of the best districts in the state to work for. And so I think if we can get them here and we can teach and we can advocate to people that this is the best district to work for, I think we wouldn't have a hard time keeping them. I think it's just getting those candidates when there's such a candidate shortage as in the state as a whole. And then as far as the guest teacher issues, I think that that's something that unfortunately needs to be worked out at a state level a little bit more, as far as speeding up that process a little bit more. The time to get a certificate kind of takes a long time, and it really probably shouldn't take as long as it takes. I know I applied for my renewal and it took 12 weeks to get that, which I feel like that should be sped up a little bit. And then it would be really, really wonderful and amazing. And there's no way that this board can do this, but it'd be really fantastic if we could get student teachers able to sub. Again, not comparing states, but Michigan has student teachers. They get an exception. It's not all college students. It's just people in the education program are able to sub, and they make the best subs, and they're able to find districts that they want to work in. So unfortunately, that isn't really an option for us, but I think that that would really drastically change our guest teacher issues.
Thank you. Mrs. Creda, you're next.
Thank you. Well, the one thing that definitely speaks is, what our district has more than others, but money talks. So if there is a way to incentivize people, whether it's bonuses, and I know Litchfield has done a really good job for its current teachers on giving the staff people and teachers access to the after school care, to the before school care, and trying to provide a lot of the benefits that way. I think really advertising and marketing all of the perks that come with working in a school district like Litchfield would be great. But I also think that we need to broaden the net. I do agree that we do need to go out of state, and we also have to get a little bit creative. Again, everything costs money, but maybe attend some job fairs out of state. Some colleges that have a really good, and I mean, ASU is great. I graduated from there, but maybe go out of state and maybe states where it's harder to get a teaching job, and recruit from there, bring them here, and then incentivize them in terms of, the school bus drivers and other things. Again, it's all about money, and that's controlled a lot at the state level. But I have read about, some of the other states that are actually compensating parents for taking their kids to school, and hopefully it doesn't get to that here. I think what the district did in expanding it to a 2-mile radius for the busing has really helped. I've noticed, I've noticed the buses seem to be a lot more on time, but I do think any kind of bonus or monetary incentive that we could offer, expand our job fairs, and I think get some really good ambassador teachers to go out and talk about what a wonderful place this is to work, because that one-to-one connection plus compensation.
Wonderful. Thank you. Mr. Fahey?
The question, please.
Absolutely. What policies or initiatives should the governing board consider to address the staffing shortages throughout the district?
Well, it's statewide and nationwide too. So it's all about the salaries at this point. It has to be about the salaries. Litchfield has to figure out a way to increase teacher pay. And I don't know how they do it, but I alone can't do it. I want to work with the board together to figure out ways to increase salaries. And I also think that building relationships between the administration and teachers is very, very important. I think if the school district has good relationships between the administration and the teachers, things go much better. The salaries and benefits ultimately decide who comes and goes, basically. There's districts that surround us in Phoenix that have salaries that are very high. And you can spin it how you want, but unless you have a competitive salary schedule, it's going to be hard to retain teachers. I also want to see teachers growing in Arizona. We have a very good population here, and I'd like to see us focus on building connections with the universities, pipelines for student teachers into the schools. Bringing people in from the corporate world to teach is also a possibility. I know that teacher certification has changed over the years. We're looking for people to come into the profession, but we have to retain teachers. And younger teachers are not really staying in the profession. And we've got to figure out a way to target these young teachers where we want them to stay. You know, we don't want to burn out teachers, and teachers are feeling extremely burned out, as are administrators in schools. And so we have to really take a look at what we can do to enhance the work, the rewards you get for it, working with the children, and really highlight our achievements. More recognition for staff, incentives like you spoke about, but ultimately it's teacher salaries.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to our next category, future planning. Mrs. Creda, you're going to start first with this question. We'll go down the board. How do you ensure that the district and school board are being fiscally responsible with district financial resources? And how do you communicate that to the stakeholders?
You said to the stakeholders? That was the last part?
Correct. How do you communicate that to the stakeholders?
I think what people want to see are results. So I mean, there are limited funds and we need to be very transparent about how those funds are used. So for example, at some of the last board meetings, we talked about using the funds for math supports and other things. And I think people want to see accountability. So a timeline, you know, here's what we're going to do. Here's the timeline. How are we going to measure this? And then at the end of the day, did it work? And if it didn't work, we need to pivot and we need to change directions and do something else. In terms of planning for the future, I know we stay in communication with the builders. We pay attention to where houses are being built, where schools are being built, and we need to continue to do that and to understand where our population is going to grow throughout the district and to allocate our resources accordingly. In terms of making sure the stakeholders know that we are fiscally conservative with our money, I think it's about showing results. We spent this much money on X and here's how it worked out. And I really think that from listening to the community that they want to know what we're doing with our dollars. And, you know, from somebody whose parents were involved in education, if you look at the percentage of the pie that schools get now compared to what they get in the 70s, it's drastically reduced. But you hear people in the community and they say, well, you got this much million and now you're asking for a bond. What are you doing with all this money? And I think it's important to keep communicating, you know, here's what our costs actually are. And here's what the results are. Here's our test scores. Here's how we are spending our money. And, you know, schools like everyone else, you know, there's inflation and we have to pay for that.
Wonderful. Thank you. Mr. Fahey? Absolutely. How do you ensure that the district and school board are being fiscally responsible with the district financial resources? And how would you communicate that to the stakeholders?
Well, I think the school district has an obligation to be a good steward to the community and also a good steward of the finances. We're underfunded, we know that, okay? But what we want to do is make sure that the money that we're getting is getting to the right places. And what I mean by that, into the classrooms and for the children. I don't know where the money goes in Litchfield Park School District, but I can find out. And hopefully a good percentage of it is making it to the staff and to the students. And personally, I don't mind paying taxes, but I want to make sure the money's being spent fiscally. And so it takes me back to just being a good steward of the money that this community generates and being transparent about how the money's being spent. I have all the faith in the world in this administration and this school board that they are good stewards of the funds. And so generating funds and creating new revenue, that's pretty much up to Governor Ducey. There's not much that, you know, the bucket's only so big. And unfortunately, there's not enough to go around. And what I'd like to see in the future is continuing to support the bonds and overrides, being good stewards of the finances and fiscally conservative, and anticipating new growth, because with new growth comes new money for the school district.
Great, thank you. Mrs. Wallace?
As far as how do we make sure, I guess we would make sure as a board member by keeping track of the budgets and making sure that we pay attention to the numbers and actually research them personally, as far as how, to answer the first part of the question, and how do you as a board member make sure that they're doing that? But then how to communicate it, I think the biggest thing with communicating it is making it simple enough for people to truly understand. And what I mean by that is all of the budget stuff is public knowledge. I was able to find all that information, but it's very hard to understand as a parent to just go through and look at that information. So if there was some sort of page or website where there was really easy pie charts that kind of broke down the percentages and where those percentages were going, if there was when new things were going on, like, we're building schools and things, if we were, kind of putting out those numbers. I mean, those campuses and that property is really expensive, and getting the new curriculum and new staffing, like putting those numbers out for the community so that they really have a grasp of that. I think it's also numbers that are sometimes, so big outside of like our personal home daily budgets that it's hard to really rationalize as an individual in the community, how that money is being divided. And I think what the parents care about is that the money is going to the classroom, and that it is going to things that are benefiting their children and the kids in their schools. And so I think being able to communicate that to parents in a simple and effective way would really be useful to the stakeholders, and hopefully a job that isn't too cumbersome, that would be easy to do, to be able to have that transparency and develop that trust in the community.
Thank you. Going back to board service category, Mr. Fahey, this question is to you. What will you do to help ensure all voices within our community are heard?
As a board member, I don't make the decisions here. We do as a board. And I'm a big believer in local school control. I want the community to have input. I want easy access to call the public. I want easy access to request for records and things like this. The school board is made up of 5 people. And what I'd really like to see is 5 people on the same page and a unified school board. And with that being said, getting people to the school board's always been a challenge, I'm a teacher in Levine, and I've attended many, many school board meetings, and eventually you see the same people over and over. What I'd like to do is attract new people into the organization and have them become involved and have them have a seat at the table. So creating some sort of parent forum, parent committees, more parent involvement, more opportunities for parents to get involved, and more communication, not just through the schools, but through the community. That's all I got to say about that.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Wallace, you're next. Would you like me to repeat the question? What will you do to help ensure all voices within our community are heard?
I think it's hard to hear all voices, and a lot of times the loudest are what are heard. And unfortunately, there's a large majority of all parents in all schools that you just never hear from. And so finding a way to get more of the majority voice and hearing the parents in the stakeholders in the community. And I think that's really only done by being in the community and talking to multiple people and asking the questions to people. I am for example, I'm involved in lots of organizations. I'm active in our church. I am active in the schools. I have a lot of friends that teach at various schools in the district. And I think getting perspectives from all the different areas are very important. Not just being an advocate for the teachers and the staff, but also being an advocate for all of the parents and stakeholders as well. And as a board, we are eventually, this is a little different with appointment, but we are eventually elected. And so if you're elected by the public and your peers, hopefully those people are invested enough to trust you to make those decisions as a board. And so even though we can't hear every voice, hopefully the diversity of the board can represent the different voices, and everyone on the board will have different connections within the community and different people to reach out to, that they can get their voice and their opinion on different things in the district. And hopefully collectively, all of those different voices will make up our district and the vision going forward.
Thank you. Mrs. Creda?
Thank you. I think it's really hard for parents sometimes. They're balancing jobs and, sports and other activities to make time to pick up the phone and communicate with their school board or their administrators. And usually it's only if there's a problem that we hear from people. So there's a couple of ways that I think we could do a better job of communicating with the schools and with the individual stakeholders. Each school is supposed to have a site council that's composed of, I think, one or two parents, some community members, and the administrators, and they're supposed to meet on a monthly basis. And I think it would be excellent if we could have a board member attend those periodically. Also, we have some pretty active parent-teacher organizations. And so if we could schedule periodically, okay, tonight there's going to be a school board member at your parent-teacher meeting. If you are a parent and you've got questions, you want the board to know what's on your mind, now's the time you come and you show up. And that will be perhaps another opportunity to communicate directly with teachers and with parents and people who have a stake in what's going on in our schools, because there's also business leaders who are on those site councils. Also, I do have lots of connections within the community, whether it's through my son's sports teams and other things, and just letting them know, hey, we're here. I can't make decisions, but I want to know what you are thinking. Please tell me. And I also think, and I put this in my application, and it probably would not be popular, but I would not be opposed to, picking 3 names out of a hat every week and calling them and saying, hey, I'm on the school board. I want to know what you're thinking. What's going on in your head? What are your issues and how are things going? And maybe I'll learn something.
Great, thank you. The next category is going to be current issues. Mrs. Wallace's question is to you. What is your stance on the district's current COVID mitigation strategies, and will you support the efforts currently in place if appointed?
I'm sorry, can you repeat
Yep,
that?
I can read it one more time. What is your stance on the district's current COVID mitigation strategies, and will you support the efforts currently in place if you are appointed?
Okay. I do feel like most of the current mitigation strategies are set by the CDC and the different medical boards as far as quarantining, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that's something that the board has decided on. As far as I'm aware, the board has only decided on mask wearing and not. Is that correct? Or sorry. So I support.
There is an opening strategy mitigation document that's on the website that there's many things, but you are correct about the
Okay.
quarantining. I will say that.
Okay, so I fully support the current mitigation strategy with allowing parents to opt out. I think that having a mask mandate is perfectly fine if we are allowing parents to ultimately make that decision for their students. I think that it's hard to say one size fits all, and there's lots of kids that have sensory issues and speech problems that they need to be able to have their mouths seen. And so I fully support what is happening right now. As far as going forward with this, I think that like the question asked that we filled out, it's important as a board to support each other and to support the board as a whole. And so even if it's not something that I currently would agree with, if it was a decision that the board voted on and the majority won, I would support that decision and speak positively about that decision if asked about it.
Thank you. Mrs. Creda, you're up.
I am familiar with what the district is doing in terms of its current COVID mitigation strategies, and I do support it. I do believe the numbers within each community, I think, need to speak for themselves. And so since the district implemented the mask, I'm going to call it the request or the requirement with the opt-out, we've seen the numbers go down in schools. As a parent, I've gotten fewer COVID letters, and I do think that they're related. I really like the part of the district's COVID mitigation strategy, and I forget the name of the program, but where we're going to have curriculum available online so that those kids who are sent home to quarantine do have access to curriculum. They can continue to learn from home. I think that is so important because we're already behind and we can't get any further behind. So I support the mask requirement. I think that I'm very relieved that the decision is now back to the individual communities and with the local school boards. And I think we follow the numbers. Right now, I think the numbers are getting better in our schools. They're going down. And if the numbers for COVID start getting back up and it gets to the point where we can no longer allow people to opt out, I think that's a decision that would have to be made at the time. But there are always students with sensory issues and people who are the exceptions. And I think it is those people who we need to work the hardest to protect. You know, last year was rough. And I think Ren mentioned that students are struggling right now, and mine were. So I will support whatever it takes to keep our kids in the classroom and our teachers in the classroom in person as much as possible.
Thank you. Mr. Fahey? Yes, I sure can. What is your stance on the district's current COVID mitigation strategies, and will you support the efforts currently in place if appointed?
Well, everything changed the other day. I'm all for mask mandates. I am. If it keeps the children safe, keeps the schools open, I'm for it. Learning at home is no good. Children struggle learning in school, and to think that they can learn at home is almost impossible. It causes relationship issues with parents, social and emotional stress. I want to do whatever we can to keep the children in the school and keep the schools open. And so I'm going to come right out and say it. I'm for a mask mandate, and now it's an option. Now it's an option, and I would hope that Litchfield would consider it.
Thank you. Moving on to future planning. Ms. Creda, this one's going to go to you first. What are your top 3 concerns that you feel the LESD board should consider taking action on? Let me just remind you, this is in future planning. So this is not necessarily just today, but in the future. So I'll repeat it one more time. What are your top 3 concerns you feel the LESD board should consider taking action on?
I think recruitment of staff and teachers, and trying to get a workforce that is representative of our community is very important. I really like the idea that someone mentioned of a pipeline for teachers. You know, teachers right now, they don't teach for the money. They teach for the love of teaching. And unless that's going to change anytime in Arizona soon, I think we need to start working on people who want to be teachers and who love it. So I think one thing would be, you know, recruiting. So kids who are interested in being teachers and those go to those child development classes in at ASU and U of A, and get them excited and interested. I also think for the future, and this is tricky, but there are so many demands on curriculum and on kiddos, and we have got to find a way to make school fun again. School was fun for me when I was a kid. We had band, we had dance, we had music, we had art. I know we can barely afford to pay for special ed services these days, but unless you grab those kids early and give them a reason to tolerate school, you're going to lose them. And I think that's one of the issues we need to focus on, is how do we make school fun again? And then the other, and for the future, that's tricky, but I do think I think planning for appropriate facilities, making sure that our buildings are up to snuff and that we don't have air conditioners die again the first week of school. We need to put more money into our facilities, because if you're hot, you can't learn.
That is a true statement. Thank you very much. Mr. Fahey, would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes.
Okay. What are your top 3 concerns you feel the LESD board should consider taking action on?
Well, it obviously has to be student achievement, and that always has to be the target. That's everything we're doing here, is student achievement. And, I'm about to test scores. I am. It is a competitive world, and we are competing against worldwide countries. We want our children to have a chance to succeed. And that is based on achievement in each grade level. Every year for a child should be a year that shows growth. And my goal is to move the high children higher, our minimally proficient children that are struggling, and we want to move them up too. We want to provide equal opportunity for our children to be successful. And with that being said, that leads me into, we want a stable school district. We want stability at the administrative level. We want stability at the teacher level. And we want our children to know what to expect when they come to school. We want a warm, inviting environment for kids. We want kids to come home from school tired from learning. We want teachers to go home feeling good and satisfied about the work they're doing. And we want Litchfield to provide a viable curriculum for the children. We want them to have the best opportunity to be successful. And adding on to that, getting the parents involved, giving them some training. I always feel like we expect the children to navigate this school system, but yet parents have a hard time navigating the school system. And I believe that we have an obligation to educate parents on how these school systems work. I'd like to see a focus on children that have needs that aren't being met in our schools. And we have a lot of them. We don't want one more kid quitting school. We've got enough that have already quit. And so my goal is to just enhance the future of the education in the community.
Thank you. Mrs. Wallace?
Okay, so 3 things. So I think that the 3 most important things of the district are hiring teachers, retaining those teachers, and training those teachers. That's not the 3, that's all just under teachers. But I think that number 1, we need to be recruiting great teachers, and then we need to be training those teachers, giving them lots of continued education so that they're the best for their kids in the classroom, supporting them in any way that we can. Then the second thing that I think is a big part of the board is our budget. Obviously, that is the biggest probably challenge of any board, is allocating where the funds go and monitoring that and stretching the dollar as far as it can, getting the best bang for our buck. So balancing the budget, being creative with the way that we are able to use those funds to best serve the community and the students and everyone involved. And then the last piece is, and obviously the thing that drives everything, is student achievement. So being able to monitor student achievement, the state test scores have been different in the last couple of years as far as them grading them and posting them and things in that regard, but monitoring those scores and again, circling that back to the teachers and being able to work with the teachers on evaluating that data and figuring out where the holes are to then again, plug it into the budget as far as where the holes are. What can we, how can we allocate the budget to help the student achievement in that area? So the three things would be staff, budget, and student achievement.
Okay, thank you very much. We are running out of time, but I'm going to say this is the last question. I have at least a dozen more here, so I will apologize in advance to all of the staff and community and board members that submitted additional questions. These are all really great, and honestly, whoever's appointed to this position will deal with these things and 10 times this amount. So you will answer them someday, but just maybe not tonight. I'm going to go to current issues as our last one this evening instead of going back to board service. Not sure where I left off. Who answered that one first last time? Mr. Fahey?
I went first last time.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Mr. Fahey, this question will be to you then, okay? How do you think we can best use the ESSER funds to help close the learning gap caused by the COVID-19 pandemic?
We got to staff up a little bit. We've got to hire instructional assistants, additional educators if possible, and that money has to be used towards student achievement. I'd like to see more instructional associates at the school. I'd like to see that used as small group interventions for children. The COVID funding, I don't know how much Litchfield got, but I would hope that was being spent wisely and that money is making it to the classrooms is where I would like to see it spent. I don't know if there's a lot of accountability with the COVID money or not, if it was just a bucket of money for school districts to spend. What I would like to see is that every resource that is available additionally to what was already available is getting to the students. And so I don't know how else to say it, but that money has to make it to the classroom. And I hopefully, I hopefully things don't get diverted into, we're behind on building maintenance or we need new buses or whatever the situation is. I want that money spent on the children in the school district.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Wallace, would you like me to repeat the question or you?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you. I agree. It needs to definitely go into the students and different services for the students. I think that a lot of students did fall behind with the time that they spent at home and that not being a good learning strategy for many students. And so getting the small group intervention time and the staff for that as well. Again, I was a before and after school director, and so I'm very pro before and after school programs. I think that offering different tutoring and different classes before and after school really makes a huge difference in student achievement and being able to catch kids up, because obviously the more time they spend in the classroom and at school, the more time that they're able to learn and gain more knowledge in that area. I think that the money could also be well spent on bringing the community back together again. And I know that student achievement is very important, but this has also been a very challenging time for the community as a whole. And so I think that money could be used to bring the community together in some sort of events that benefit everyone, the students and the families, and just rebuilding that connection, that trust, and the excitement around education again, just trying to regain a normalcy and prior pandemic situation. But so before and after school programming, more small group intervention and things to bring the community together.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Creda.
So I'm somewhat familiar with what the district had planned, and a lot of it was directed, as far as I recall, all of it was directed towards the classroom, towards getting right to students. not purchasing any more technology. It was all for instruction. And I support the use of that in the classroom to make up the deficits. I think it needs to be spent carefully where it's needed the most, because we have a lot of differences among our student population here. We've got Title I schools, we've got non-Title I schools, and we've got, parents who one of them stays at home, and we've got some where they're single parents, and that parent might be working 2 or 3 jobs and they're struggling to put food on the table. So I think we need to target the resources where they're needed most and not we need to look at each school individually. What do those students need and how do we meet those needs, instead of applying a one size fits all to every school in the district? If it's possible to use some of that money to make up some of the loss for their social and emotional, maybe additional counselors, maybe some after-school programs that might be a little fun for the kids, that would be great to help them reconnect with each other. I know there's tons of sports available in middle school. I haven't seen any drama or debate or anything else. Like, if you can't run, there's nothing available for you. And I would like to see more of those fun things. And so, I'm all about student achievement. I love A's, I love B's, I love kids who are learning, but if they hate school, none of it's going to matter because they're not going to stick with it. And so I think we need to find a way to meet their needs, help them make up the deficits, but also we have to do it without torturing them with more worksheets.
Thank you very much. So that ends our question period. I'm going to give everyone a 60-second closing statement, and then we will close out. As I mentioned in the beginning, we started left to right, so we're going to start right to left this time. So Ms. Wallace, I'll let you go first. 60 seconds and a closing statement.
I just again want to thank everyone that is watching and taking the time, and everyone here. I think that I've read the things that I can read about the different candidates, and I think that there are some awesome people that are coming out for this position, and I think that's awesome. And I don't think that we'll go wrong in any situation. So I just, again, thank you all for everything that you've done and are doing, and together as a community, we will get through this. And like I was telling them before, I think we are at the end of it, and I think that we can start putting it behind us and moving forward into more important things than the social issues that have kind of been dominating us right now. So I'm excited for the future, and I'm excited for this board and this district, and I thank all of you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Fahey?
I'd also like to thank everybody for letting me attend. I really appreciate it. If I'm elected to the board, I'm going to be a good steward of the community and a good steward to the children of this school district, and to the staff of this school district, and to the community of this school district, and work collaboratively with the school board and try to unite the purpose of what we're doing, which is educating children. I want to keep the politics out of the school boards, and I want to work for what's best for the children. And my vote doesn't matter. What does matter is the 5 members on this board. And I would love to see us all agree unanimously on decisions that we make and work together. I want to support the superintendent. That is my #1 purpose here, is to support her and her initiatives and her plans for this school district any way we can. That is what a school board is designed to do. And I promise you that I will do my best and uphold my oath to public education and the future of public education, which I think has the opportunity to prosper from here on out and to be the shining star of America, which it's always been. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Creda?
Well, thank you for the opportunity. Again, the parents who submitted questions, you are involved. And whether I'm appointed to the school board or not, I encourage you to reach out to some of your friends and tell them when the school board meetings are, drag them with you, make them go to the PTA meeting and tell them, hey, here's the link, submit questions. Here's the link, watch the YouTube video. Because the more voices that are heard, the more diversity that we get, the more input we get, the stronger we're going to be as a community and as a school board and for all of the students. If I am appointed to the position, I will work very hard to listen to the many voices in the community and to connect with the community and to be respectful toward those with whom I disagree. And I believe that the people who show up to speak, they deserve respect. And I think everybody's here because they care. And I think that is the one thing that we all agree about, is that we care about the kiddos. And so I would love the opportunity to represent the community on the school board.
Thank you. Well, I would just like to say thank you for being here. I have been on both sides of this before. I was appointed back in 2016. I have run for elections and done the candidates forum in that way. And now being on this side asking questions, it's much easier to be on this side, by the way. So thank you guys for coming out and sort of sharing who you are and your vision for this district. That's, the utmost important thing for people to learn tonight. I wanted to quickly go through the next steps of what will happen here. The candidates on the stage are probably aware, but for those listening at home and that don't know the exact process, if candidates chose to submit an application to the school district, you can view it on our website, lesd79.org. It is on the governing board vacancy page, and you can read through all of the letters of interest and or applications if one was submitted. From here, the process is all of this information goes to our Maricopa County Superintendent, Steve Watson's office, who happens to be here this evening. So he got to hear firsthand. Like I mentioned before, there are 3 additional candidates. All of the candidates will be interviewed in person or via Zoom, whatever you organize, by Mr. Watson and or his teammates in his office. Once that process it happens and he, vets each candidate, then he will make his decision and let us, the candidate and the school board know, and it'll be announced from there. There's not a specific timeline, just when that process, when he's able to connect with everyone and that process is completed. So we are anxiously awaiting our 5th board member. It is hard with 5. It is even harder with 4. So we anxiously await that decision. And again, thank you so much for coming out tonight. This is not an easy job, but it is one hopefully that you will grow to love, and you will meet some really, really interesting colleagues along the way, both on the school board, in the district, and at the administration level, and also parents and community members that you might never have had the opportunity to meet or come in contact with before. So it is a unique role that I hope you will grow to love, as I have. So I'm going to let Superintendent Gunning wrap up for the evening. So thank you very much.
I would like to thank all of you for attending tonight, and definitely for your dedication and jumping into the ring for this opportunity. We really appreciate your involvement and your commitment to our district. And as always, want to thank our current board members for all of your dedication and for giving up family time again tonight to be here as we take on this next journey. So thank you again, and we look forward to the outcome very soon. Have a great evening.